Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, The Medieval Reader. So today I would like to talk about a 17th century French novel that isn't well known among the French and unfortunately is not available in English. But in the late 17th century, when Catherine Bernard wrote Eléonor d'Ivray, this book was actually quite popular and praised by contemporaries, which is what I will discuss at the very end. I will include all of the information about Eléonor d'Ivray below, including a link to an online French version, in case you can read French. But I will begin by giving you a little bit of a publication background, trying to situate the text, and then I will tell you about the plot, and then I will talk about its reception. So first, I talked about The Princess of Clèves by Madame de Lafayette. I will link the video below. It was a very popular 17th century novel that was praised for the way in which it was able to express emotions. And Eléonor d'Ivray by Catherine Bernard was clearly influenced by Lafayette. It was written less than 10 years later, so La Princesse de Clèves came out in March 1676. Sorry. It was published by Barbin, who published the writings of a lot of major female writers in the 17th century. Eléonor d'Ivray by Catherine Bernard came out in August 1687. She wrote a number of novels. She was also a playwright. I believe she was a poet because she wrote the poem for the wedding of Marie-Anne de Bavière, who was the Dauphine. She was the wife of Louis XIV's eldest son. And Marie-Anne de Bavière is also the woman to whom Eléonor d'Ivray is dedicated. The full title, the original title, was The Misfortunes of Love, first novel, Eléonor d'Ivray. So it is often referred to as The Misfortunes of Love, but today it is known as Eléonor d'Ivray. Our title character, Eléonor, I will call her Eléonor, is raised by the Countess of Tuscanelle. She's a family friend. She's not raised by her father, who is still alive and living in a monastery because he was disgraced in war. And so Eléonor was raised by a family friend, and her brother was raised by the Count of Rethelois, so that the children would not be tainted by their father's disgrace. Eléonor falls in love with the Duke of Misnie, but the Duke's mother, not knowing Eléonor's personal background, thinks that Eléonor is too poor and of low birth, and so she does not approve of the Duke's love for Eléonor, splits them up, and Eléonor then is betrothed to the Count of Rethelois, whom, as I mentioned, was raising Eléonor's brother. So the Duke of Rethelois is a lot older than her. Now, the Countess of Tuscanelle, who cares for Eléonor, has a daughter named Mathilde, and Mathilde is also in love with the Duke of Misnie. It seems unintentional. Both Eléonor and the Duke were always telling Mathilde about their own feelings for each other. They didn't want to tell each other their feelings, so instead they confided to Mathilde. And so slowly Mathilde starts to have an interest in the Count of Misnie. But as you can imagine, it doesn't really work out because Eléonor is betrothed to the Count of Rethelois. Mathilde is very happy that Eléonor is betrothed to someone else and tries to take advantage of the situation. The Duke of Misnie does not know why Eléonor has gone off with this other man. He thinks that Eléonor has just lost interest in him. But then Eléonor returns, and the Duke of Misnie wants to get back with her. And she says, no, look, I have to do my duty to my family. I have to marry the Count of Rethelois, and you should marry Mathilde. And because she cares so much about her friend, who in some ways committed emotional blackmail against her, she gives the Duke of Misnie to Mathilde. And Mathilde's mother and the Duke's mother actually think that it would be a perfect marriage. Unfortunately, the Duke of Misnie is not interested in Mathilde, and he even attends Eléonor's wedding to the Count of Rethelois. In the end, Eléonor accepts her duty. She marries the Count of Rethelois. The Duke does not marry Mathilde, condemns Mathilde, tells her that Mathilde is responsible for everything that happened. Mathilde experienced a lot of guilt, and because of her grief and her guilt, she dies. This book is all about the misfortunes of love, about how passion, it's not good to follow your passions. It's better to accept your duties, because when passion and duty conflict, duty will always win, because it's always what your family wants of you that matters. And those who are clinging to their passions and not accepting their duty will be miserable. That's what Catherine Bernard wants to show, and she shows it through her dialogue more than through the plot, or more than through the words of an omniscient narrator. Unlike The Princess of Cleves, where there are intercalated stories, there are no intercalated stories in Catherine Bernard's Eléonor d'Ivray. The major theme in this novel, as I mentioned, is duty versus passion, and the misfortunes of love. It is a tragedy, and one that feels very natural. In the 17th century, most women would not be allowed to follow their passions and would be miserable, as is the Princess of Cleves, because of her passion. In the 17th century, the Gallant Mercury was a monthly journal that reported on contemporary events. And in its September 1687 issue, it included a letter from Bernard de Fontenelle, who was a major literary figure at the time, praising the novel to a female friend. So he sent a copy of Eléonor d'Ivray to this female friend, and he attached this letter, and the letter was published in the Gallant Mercury in the 1687 issue. And there's a few things I want to mention. Monsieur de Fontenelle says, quote, I'm translating this, "This is a small work that lacks in plot, but in which feelings are treated with the greatest possible care." Indeed, the plot isn't very important. The plot is fairly simple. There's quite a bit of intrigue, but really it's about the emotions, and it's about the conflict between passion and duty. It's about these three characters, Eléonor, Mathilde, and the Duke of Misnie, who are all sympathetic figures, are all trying to be with the people they love, and then feel that they are no longer masters of their destiny. There's this constant discussion about how they're not masters of their destiny. And these emotions come out through the dialogue, as I said. He also says, quote, "It's only nature that makes itself felt." In other words, you're really encountering nature and what natural love and jealousy look like. He talks about the science of the heart, science du cœur, and he refers to the science of the heart also when it comes to the Princess of Cleves, which he compares Eléonor d'Ivray to. And again, it's clear that Bernard was influenced by the Princess of Cleves. Finally, he says that Bernard is able to express in a few words what a more mediocre author would spend lines and lines trying to express. And I would have to agree with Fontenelle. Reading Eléonor d'Ivray, Bernard is really able to show you the tragedy of this love triangle just through a few words. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about a novel that no one's heard of. If you can read French, again, I will link below the novel, and I will talk to you later. Bye now.